Okay, so get this right. Today, we're diving into a place that's basically synonymous with haunted the Ohio State Reformatory.
Yeah, this one's a classic, isn't it?
Totally. And we're not just talking about your run-of-the-mill ghost stories here. We've got firsthand accounts from people who swear they've encountered something in those halls,
Right. Like actual experiences.
plus all the spooky tales that have been passed down, the kind that send chills down your spine.
Oh, yeah.
And to top it off, we're even going to see what the Historical Society has to say about what might be lurking behind those bars.
Should be interesting to see how their perspective, the history part of it, ties into all the creepy stuff.
Exactly. So, what makes the Ohio State Reformatory such a magnet for paranormal activity?
Well, it's all about the history, isn't
Yeah.
it? Can't have a good haunting without a pretty messed up past. And this place has it in spades.
Lay it on me. What's the backstory here?
So construction began back in 1886. And at the time, the whole idea was to reform first-time offenders.
Like, give them a second chance.
Exactly. They wanted to be this kind of middle ground between like juvenile detention and a hardcore penitentiary, a place where they could, get their act together.
Oh, bless their hearts. That didn't quite pan out, did it?
Not exactly. The prison population in Columbus just exploded.
Huh.
And the reformatory, well, it went from this place of reform to imagine being crammed into a cell meant for one, maybe two people with like three other guys.
Oh, God, no. Talk about a recipe for disaster.
Right. Disease was rampant. Violence was a daily occurrence. It got dark fast.
So this place that was supposed to be about second chances became a pressure cooker of, pure despair.
Pretty much. And that suffering, well, it kind of seeped into the walls. You can feel it.
Ugh, that's heavy.
Hundreds of deaths, disease, murder, suicide. Those stories, they don't just disappear.
That's what makes those ghost stories even creepier.
It's like the reformatory itself remembers.
Like a giant haunted memory palace or something. Yeah.
Something like that. When we were talking about the basement earlier, it got me thinking about all the messed up stuff that must have gone down there.
Oh, yeah, the basement. Not exactly a place you'd want to throw a party, even in the best of times, right? But in a prison, forget about it.
Right. And this one, it's got a particularly heavy vibe.
What is it about that basement?
Well, one of the most well-known stories, and this is going to be rough, but there's a story about a 14-year-old boy who was beaten to death down there.
Oh, God, no.
That kind of violence, it leaves a mark,
It's like a stain on the soul of the place.
Exactly. And it's no surprise people say they feel his presence, like a young, vulnerable energy.
Oh, that's heartbreaking. So he's just lost down there, trapped.
Some say that.
Mm.
But there are others, and this is where it gets really chilling, who describe a darker presence too. Almost like whoever killed him, their energy's down there too.
Oh, God, that's awful. It's like the worst of humanity, just echoing through time.
Yeah, and that echo, it seems to be strongest in certain spots. Take the hole, for example.
The solitary confinement cells. You're telling me it's haunted down there, too.
Haunted might be putting it lightly. Those tiny dark cells, the despair, the isolation. It's like a breeding ground for restless spirits.
Yeah, it's giving me the creeps just thinking about it.
People report feeling sick, nauseous, lightheaded. Some even see glowing eyes peering out from the darkness.
Okay, hard pass, no thank you. I'm claustrophobic just hearing about it.
And what's crazy is there are so many stories. Like, we even came across an account from a former staff member, a woman named Michelle, who worked there back in 2007.
Okay, what'd she experience?
So she was down in the hole with a colleague one day, and they both heard these footsteps, like shuffling footsteps, coming from the hallway.
Oh, no. That's how all the good horror movies start.
Right. So naturally, they assume it's visitors, and they jump out to, give them a scare, except when they get to the hallway, it's completely empty.
Are you serious?
The shuffling did stop.
Vanished into thin air. See, that's what I'm talking about. It's like a scene out of a movie.
It really makes you wonder, doesn't it? Like, what are we dealing with here? Are these residual hauntings echoes of the past, or is it something more, something aware?
Okay, you know what? I need a breather for a second. We need to lighten the mood. You'd think a place like the chapel, that'd be different, right?
You'd think so, wouldn't you? A place of peace, maybe even some divine protection.
Right. Good vibes only.
But the chapel, ironically, is another hot spot. Imagine you walk into this space looking for some solace, some sense of peace.
Yeah, a little bit of sanctuary.
But it's also the very spot where they carried out executions.
Wait, seriously, executions in the chapel?
That's the thing about the reformatory. It's full of these contradictions, this duality. and it seeps into everything.
You know, the blogger we were reading, they said they felt super uneasy in the chapel, like something was watching them. And they're usually drawn to those kinds of spaces.
It's like all those emotions associated with it, the fear, the sorrow, even the fleeting moments of hope, they're just all tangled up, impossible to separate.
Speaking of unsettling, we can't forget about the chair room. Even the name sends chills down my spine. What's the deal with that place?
So picture this. A single chair, just sitting there, facing outward, like it's waiting for an audience that never arrives. Even without the ghost stories, it's inherently creepy, you know?
Oh, totally. Like something out of a psychological thriller.
Exactly. And our blogger friend. They said they couldn't shake this feeling of being watched from that room.
Empty room, creaky chair, bad vibes.
And it gets worse. There's even a story of someone who went in there and, like, tried to taunt whatever presence they believed was there. They sat in the chair, challenged the spirits, the whole 9 yards.
Oh, no. Never taunt the spirits. Rookie mistake.
Right. So, of course, they claimed to leave with all these scratch marks down their back.
No way. Are you serious?
Whether they were self-inflicted, well, that's up for debate. But it's still a creepy thought, isn't it?
Super creepy. Okay, so we've covered the basement, the hole, the chapel, the chair room. What about the cell blocks? Those were where the inmates lived and died. That's got to be where the real action is, right?
The cell blocks are interesting because, in a way, they represent the heart of the reformatory. It's where the energy is most concentrated, both from the inmates and the guards.
Right, all those lives, all that suffering. It's heavy stuff.
And it seems like a lot of it is rooted in specific events. Like, take the East Cell Block, for example. It holds the Guinness World Record for the largest freestanding group of cells, so it stands to reason there might be a higher concentration of paranormal activity there.
Yeah, it's like the more people, the more potential for residual energy.
Exactly. And some of the stories coming out of East Cell Block are especially unsettling, like the story of James Lockhart, an inmate who set himself on fire to escape relentless bullying.
Oh my God, that's awful. Just the desperation to think that someone could be driven to that point.
It's a reminder of how brutal prison life was, especially back then.
Absolutely. And then there's the story of Larry Hamer, who hanged himself just days before he was set to be transferred.
Tragic.
Do you think he knew somehow what awaited him at the next prison? Or was it the reformatory itself that pushed him to it?
It's hard to say, but these stories, they paint a picture of a place where hope was a fragile thing.
Man, this place is intense. We're talking about more than just your average ghost stories here. It's like this deep, unsettling sadness woven into every brick. You know, it's one thing to hear about like cold spots and things moving and all the classic haunted stuff.
Right, the usual suspects.
But for me, it's the stories of specific entities that really get under my skin. You know what I mean? Like,
Right.
these aren't just random energies. These are like characters, each with their own story to tell.
Yeah, and the Ohio State Reformatory has more than its fair share of those for sure.
Oh, for sure. It's like they're woven into the fabric of the building, you know.
Totally. And their stories are as much a part of the place as the bricks and mortar, like Helen Glotke, for instance.
Right. The superintendent's wife. Didn't she die under some pretty mysterious circumstances?
It's a tragic story, really. So it's 1949, and she's reaching for something, a jewelry box, I think, when a handgun falls and goes off. Hits her right in the lung.
Oh my God.
She died 2 days later.
Just a freak accident.
That's what they say.
But wasn't there something about roses?
Ah, you've heard that, huh?
It was in one of the accounts, I think. Something about smelling roses near her old bathroom.
Yeah, there have been a few reports of that. And, roses were her favorite perfume.
Whoa, so it's like a lingering scent.
Could be. And some even claim to smell cigar smoke, too, which was her husband's thing.
No way! That's wild. So are they together, you think? In the afterlife, I mean? Still drawn to this place they called home, even if it was a prison?
Now, wouldn't that be something?
Seriously? Okay, so we've got Helen's story. Super sad. But what about the guards who work there? I mean, talk about a tough gig.
Right. Imagine the things they saw, day in and day out.
The violence, the despair. It's got to take a toll.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And some people believe that energy, that burden, it kind of lingers.
Which is why some visitors say they feel these invisible hands, like helping them up the stairs, or a pressure on their back, like someone's guiding them.
That's the idea. It's like even in death, these guards are still looking out for people, trying to maintain order.
Oh, wow. Okay, so changing gears a little bit. We got to talk about Frank Hanger. He's become kind of a legend, right?
Frank Hanger, the guard who was murdered by an inmate back in the 40s.
Yeah, that's the one.
Oh, yeah. His story is definitely one of the more well-known ones.
People claim to have actually caught him on camera.
There are definitely some interesting photos floating around.
A shadowy figure, still making his rounds.
Dedicated, even in death.
Right. Some even say he responds to authority figures.
Like he's still on duty.
That's what I'm talking about. Like, what keeps a spirit tethered to this plane, And why here, in this place with so much darkness?
It's a question that has haunted us for centuries, hasn't it? What is it that binds the living and the dead?
Seriously. Okay, so we've got Helen, we've got the guards, we've got Frank Hanger, and then there are all those other unexplained phenomena too.
Oh yeah, we're just scratching the surface here.
Like shuffling footsteps in empty hallways, always creepy disembodied voices and laughter coming from the guard tower.
Don't forget the stories of visitors being pushed on the stairs.
Oh yeah, that one. And what about that one account where someone heard tapping sounds coming from the walls? Like prisoner code? That one freaked me out.
Chilling, isn't it? To think that those inmates, they might still be trying to communicate.
So we've covered a lot of ground here. Tragic history, restless spirits, unexplained events. What does it all mean? Is the Ohio State Reformatory just haunted by its past? Or is there something more at play?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And if I'm being honest, I don't think there's an easy answer.
Right.
But what I find so fascinating about this place, about all these stories, is that it forces us to confront the unknown, to consider the possibility that there are forces at work that we just don't fully understand.
Yeah. Forces that might just be reaching out from beyond the veil.
And if you're brave enough to listen, who knows what you might hear?
Well said. Well, folks, if you're feeling brave, curious, or maybe just a little bit crazy, the Ohio State Reformatory welcomes visitors. Especially with Halloween just around the corner, it's an experience you won't soon forget. Just maybe watch your step and listen closely to the whispers in the shadows, okay? You never know who or what you might encounter within those walls. Until next time, keep exploring the unknown.